It is 5:30 on August 31st, 2026. I'm calling this Board of Health meeting to order. On our agenda are a number of different items. We will open with a reading of our mission.
The mission of the Falmouth Board of Health is to protect and promote the health, safety, and well-being of residents and visitors of the town of Falmouth. The primary function of the Board of Health to achieve our mission are to, must have been a plural there somewhere, prevent and control disease, enforce state and local regulations, promulgate local health regulations, identify and protect from environmental hazards, and advocate for a healthy community. Kumbaya.
We will, first of all, second of all, is there anybody in the audience besides a health agent and FCTV recording this? No. Okay. We will allow public comment at the discretion of the chair, and please keep your comments respectful. Is there any comment on any item not on the agenda? Okay. Our first item is a presentation by the wastewater superintendent on the watershed plans.
Hi. It did say on your board outfall and watershed.
Outfall, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to start, as you said, with watershed management plans. But I'll go to the outfall second. So I'm the Amy Lowell, wastewater superintendent. Two big topics that both overlap between the wastewater division and the Board of Health. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here and talk to you guys about it. First, watershed management planning and where we are on that project. So you guys are very aware that the state passed new watershed permit regulations in 2023. And those, they did a lot of different things, but one of the things they did was designated watersheds to ponds with total maximum daily load limits for nitrogen as nitrogen-sensitive areas. And everything in blue on this figure is a state-designated nitrogen-sensitive area. It's the watershed to a coastal pond with a TMDL for nitrogen. And those regulations required either IAs, denitrifying septic systems, to be installed on all properties in those nitrogen-sensitive areas within 5 years, or the town's other option was to prepare watershed plans for each watershed and apply for watershed permits for all of these areas by 2030. And of course, the town picked the latter option, and that's what we're here to talk about. So the watershed management plan is a plan to meet those nitrogen total maximum daily load limits for each nitrogen-sensitive area, state-designated nitrogen-sensitive area watershed in Falmouth. And for each watershed, we'll define sewer areas, areas where nitrogen-removing septic systems, which are sometimes called IEA systems or for innovative alternative, where those will be required, and any other planned components like fertilizer management, aquaculture, etc. The plan will outline phasing and schedule for each through 2050, develop build-out and contingency scenarios, and provide overall planning level cost estimate and schedule. The plan is intended, the plans are intended to be and will be phased and adaptive. The idea is that the town will be monitoring and that there will be opportunities for adjustment along the way. So the town's not committing 100% to everything up front. There will be phases and decision points in the future. The schedule for this project is the town appropriated money for a draft watershed management plan for all of these nitrogen sensitive areas at the November 2025 town meeting. And the consultants working on this for the town are GHD and ScienceWares. Kristen Ratchin with ScienceWares is here this evening, and she's been assisting first the Water Quality Management Committee and now the wastewater division with doing this watershed planning. these preliminary draft plans have been presented as we're going along and as we're working through the initial phases of this to the Water Quality Management Committee. So the Water Quality Management Committee has seen a number of preliminary draft plans for watersheds and has had general discussions about them, but there have been no decisions made yet. And this, of course, is the first discussion with the Board of Health. So the goal, of course, is to be here today, or the next step was to be here today and talk about it here. We'll also be discussing in a planning board meeting in September and at a select board meeting this fall. The goal is to develop an internal, meaning internal to the town, draft plan by the end of 2026 and finalize the plans and apply for watershed permits over the following years, 2027 to 2030.
I have a, okay. I have a question. I have an observation and a question.
Yep.
The observation is, in fact, that the select board, or at least the chair, is interested in a joint meeting
Okay.
of the affected or the relevant boards, which
Okay.
might make the use of your time more efficient.
Okay, great.
The timing of that has not been determined.
Sure.
The other question is, that's a wide range of time, 2027 to 2030,
Yes.
for the watershed permits, given that they're being planned kind of all at the same time, which is fine, kind of all at the same time, because I've seen them. Is there any narrowing of that you could?
So we can definitely talk about that. When the town, it's open for discussion. When the town submitted notices of intent to the state at the end of 2023, I believe it was, saying that we were going to submit these watershed permit applications in 4 groups
Right.
over the 4 years. And the idea at the time was, this is a huge amount of work to make these decisions and to implement the decisions, and to, it's some work to, you're required, once you've applied and received the permit, to update your watershed permit. You're supposed to provide an update every 5 years.
Right.
So the idea was to stagger those. After we did that, however, after we submitted those notices of intent, so this is what we've told the state we were going to do so far, is submit these in 4 sets over the 4 years in order to spread out the effort at each phase. However, after we submitted those, we did have more internal discussions and more discussion at the Water Quality Management Committee, and realized that it is most helpful to talk about all these things at once. As challenging as it is, the Board of Health needs, the town needs to talk about town-wide maps for where, for example, these denitrifying septic systems would be required. So we haven't yet changed the schedule that we've presented to the state, but we certainly can. We have told the state, we haven't actually submitted the paperwork yet, but we've told the state actually we wanted to delay the first set. We had originally said we would provide the watershed permit applications for Little Pond and Great Pond in January of this coming year. We would like to delay that so that at least this town-wide concept has been discussed as a town-wide concept and has made it out of this draft plan stage before we submit the final plan for Great Pond and Little Pond. Little Pond is very straightforward. We've already done all the work there. Great Pond is more complicated because it is a very, very large watershed with an enormous amount of nitrogen load to remove. So that's a very long answer to your question. And I think we can definitely reevaluate the schedule. We've basically already done that by beginning the process the way we have.
Okay. Yes, George.
Just to elaborate a little on the time issue and why it's such a huge concern to us, is almost at every meeting we come to a proposal from a homeowner about something, and we're faced with, should we require them to do something other than a standard Title V? That is
Right.
a nitrogen-reducing system. And then the issue becomes, well, they may get a sewer in X years, or they may be in the group of people in town who don't have to make any physical changes, or they might have to do an IA system in Y years because of the watershed plans. And not knowing X or Y, that is how many years away something is, and whether it's a nothing, a sewer, or a septic system, is the cause of great angst.
I understand.
Enormous angst. It
Yep.
would be hard for me to emphasize the amount of angst. And so I suspect all evening we're going to be pressing you more for your best guesses of dates. So for example, you said the Little Pond, Great Pond was going to be the first set, and originally, I think by the end of this year.
It was-
But you're going to, or January next, but you're going to change that. What are you going to change it to? And more broadly, what we would just take you to dinner for is a list of all the addresses in town and which of those three groups they're going to be in and what year.
That's part of the
Matter of
actual
fact,
plan.
Right.
a
So-
whole day's worth of.
So we are working to provide areas where sewers are planned in the future, areas where sewers are not planned in the future, but nitrogen removal is still going to be required, and therefore we are looking at denitrifying septic systems in large areas. It is a big, expensive endeavor, and we need to also talk about financing. So I can't commit right now on a timeframe, but I think as I've said here, the goal is to have the town have each of these boards and all of these boards together, looking at a draft plan that shows what we're looking at and likely some options, right? And then it's not just my job to decide when this happens. So I think based on that, we will decide the next phases.
So we'll know
Just
what
one last, even if you could tell us that no one's going to get a sewer before 2020X, that would be a huge help.
Right. So
That number alone, and while I'm in that, can Great Pond Phase 2 be done before the outflow pipe?
no.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So I understand what you're saying, and we're all in a tough spot because any additional sewering beyond the project we're doing right now, the Great Pond Phase 1 project, requires an additional discharge site. And we are working very hard to permit that discharge site. Right now, our schedule, we project that outfall, the discharge site, which is an outfall, will be available by 2031, 2032. 2031 is the early finish, 2032 is the late finish for the outfall. And the additional sewering could happen after that, but can't happen before that. So that's your first timeframe answer is there will be no more sewering outside the Great Pond Phase 1 until after the sewer is available, and after the outfall is available, and after the town has appropriated money for the next sewer project. Adopted this plan about where it's all happening and appropriated money for the next sewer project. All right. I hear you. More decisions sooner.
Yep.
So the overall strategy for drafting the plans to meet the nitrogen load limits involves these three types or we're putting them in three categories. Sewering, nitrogen removing septic systems and other nitrogen removal strategies. The sewering will continue to be focused in the areas of densest development, closest to the impaired coastal ponds, and closest in general to other existing sewer areas. That's just sort of our overall strategy for that. Sewer areas will generally be where they've been outlined in previous plans with some expansion and refinement because the town was not looking as far into the future at that time. The town's previous planning did not outline, for example, all of the sewering needed to meet the Great Pond TMDL. It looked at the next couple of phases of sewering required to meet the Great Pond TMDL. So where it's required to meet the nitrogen TMDL, sewer areas may be outlined beyond those previously planned. And the two areas we're talking about primarily are Great Pond and Wacoit Bay, though Wild Harbor is another location where we will talk about potentially expanding that new Silver Beach sewer area, potentially. Nitrogen removing septic systems will be planned in two general areas, or in two general ways. In watersheds where sewers are not planned, so there are lots of watersheds in Falmouth where we are not envisioning more sewers due to less development density. You know, there are areas where the houses are further apart and the lots are bigger. Less nitrogen removal required to meet the water quality goals. Some of these watersheds, including, most notably, most of the watersheds along the Buzzards Bay side of Falmouth, have much less nitrogen removal required to meet their TMDLs. They're in better shape and have less nitrogen load in their water coming from their watersheds. And or due to distance from other existing sewer areas. Load limits will primarily be met with nitrogen removing septic systems in those areas. Nitrogen removing septic systems will also be a part of the plan in some watersheds where more nitrogen removal is required beyond the sewer areas. So in, for example, the Wacoit Bay watershed, there will be sewers where previously envisioned on seacoast shores, sea pit, antler shores, and likely in some of the denser areas north of that and perhaps to the east of that. But even beyond that, there may be IAs in north of that in the upper watershed. And Wacoit's not the only example, but there are others. So just because there's sewering in the watershed doesn't mean there also won't be IAs. The other nitrogen removing strategies and credits, the plans include aquaculture, where it's helpful for nitrogen management and where it's been proposed by the Marine Environmental Services Department. This is not something we're coming up with. We are not spending any additional time in this process evaluating aquaculture. That's entirely in the hands of MES. But where they have proposed it, we are taking note of that and showing it and accounting for nitrogen removal. Permeable reactor barriers may be proposed where potentially effective. It's not a big part of any plan that we're envisioning right now, but it may be a part of a couple of the plans. And each plan includes credits for fertilizer reduction, stormwater management, which is managed by the engineering department, and a reduction in atmospheric deposition. This is a technical issue I don't want to spend a lot of time on, but basically the Massachusetts estuary reports that the total maximum daily load limits were based on included a certain amount of nitrogen coming onto both the ground and the water bodies from atmospheric deposition. Studies have shown since then, some very significant studies have shown since then that there's been a very substantial reduction in atmospheric deposition over time due to shutting down of coal-fired power plants. So we've reduced that factor in the planning. Yes, sir.
Two questions. So permeable reactive barriers I know they've been studied. I know that there's some places where they are clearly would benefit. Does the state accept those as?
So all of these things in this category, the state has so far considered sewering and certain IAs that meet the, you guys probably know better than I, what's the term for? Bannered? Okay. Right, so that's conventional technology. That's what the state officially accepts as far as nitrogen removal. Everything else, the state says, okay, you can put that in your plan if you want, but you have to give the state a backup plan saying what you're gonna do if none of that works. So anything other than sewering and Banner IAs, the state considers sort of unknown or uncertain. So they want you to have a backup plan. The way we've been proceeding with that is what the state's requiring is as a backup plan, is wildly conservative. You know, it's assuming that no IAs are getting better than 19. It assumes that, there's no fertilizer reduction, so we're looking at that wildly conservative state required contingency plan,
right.
And we're putting together what that would look like, but we have no intention of showing that as a town contingency plan, because it is way too conservative, it requires way too much more than the town believes is necessary. So I guess can I keep going with this?
Yes, because there's another question, but we'll hopefully get back to it, or maybe at a different meeting. So.
Okay. So both the sewer and the nitrogen removing septic system areas have been delineated by starting closest to the impaired coastal pond and moving up the watershed until we've removed enough load to meet the nitrogen TMDL, given all the other loading factors. So I talked about this a little bit. There's 3 categories of plans for each watershed. One is what we're calling a preferred plan or a preferred compliance plan, and that is what we propose to meet the TMDL. What we propose to meet the TMDL, assuming the credits that we're assuming for these various strategies. Then there, as we just discussed, is a DEP required contingency plan, which we're saying right now we do not intend to do this. We're going to show for a lot of reasons why that is not what the town intends to do. And then there's a preferred contingency plan, which is sort of in the middle. The town's contingency plan in case some of this alternative stuff does not meet its removal goals. So the plans differ in the amount of credit assumed for various nitrogen removal strategies. The credits are reduced by attenuation through freshwater ponds and streams. So this is one of the complexities that Kristen has been dealing a lot with, is that the way the watershed load evaluation works is that you look at all the parcels and the land uses for those parcels, and then where they are in the watersheds. And the ones closest to the coastal ponds have the largest impact. But if you're further up in the watershed, the state's evaluation process did not give any credit for just groundwater moving through the aquifer. But if groundwater moves through a freshwater pond or through a freshwater stream, the state's calculation or model assumed that there's natural attenuation through that freshwater pond or through that freshwater stream. So either a sewer or an IA upstream of a freshwater pond, as far as the nitrogen load removal math, does less for the coastal pond than a property that's on the downstream side. Additional development in any of these watersheds beyond what there is right now will increase the amount of nitrogen removal required in each watershed. So we are looking at build out as part of this planning process, but that is something that the town's going to need to talk a lot more about as far as regulation and management of planning, regulation and management for that. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to show, I've just talked about credits assumed in each of these types of plans. So we have here the strategy in the far left column: sewer, nitrogen removing septic systems, aquaculture, fertilizer reduction, stormwater best management practices, and atmospheric deposition. And then for each of these three plans, the preferred plan, the DEP contingency plan, which we don't plan to move forward with, and the town's preferred contingency plan. In that preferred plan, in all of these, sewering removes 100% of the nitrogen from the septic system source, because not only are we taking it up to the town's tertiary wastewater treatment plant, but we also plan to discharge to the outfall, which removes that nitrogen from the watershed. So in each case, that's 100% removal. Nitrogen removing septic systems, each of these assumes a different effluent concentration and therefore a different percentage nitrogen removal. We're basing these percentages on the nitrogen removal numbers from the Massachusetts Estuaries Project report. You want to use, I don't think it's helpful to argue about those numbers, but in the preferred plan, we're assuming 10 milligrams per liter effluent, which is the Board of Health's standard for, in the new regulation for denitrifying septic systems. As I'd mentioned earlier, the DEP at this point only allows 19 milligrams per liter credit for those systems. And we believe that while 10 may be tough, a number of 12 is a better backup number for the future for these systems. So that's the number in the preferred contingency plan. For aquaculture, the Marine Environmental Services did a pilot project, and so our preferred plan assumes the removal numbers documented in that pilot project. Again, in the DEP contingency plan, you'd assume 0 for that, and in the preferred plan, we assume half of that credit. Fertilizer and stormwater, those assume a 25% reduction in the attenuated fertilizer load and 25% reduction in the attenuated nitrogen load from impervious surfaces. Again, DEP would say you get no credit for that ultimately in the contingency plan. For this, the preferred contingency plan, we're assuming half of that credit. Atmospheric deposition, we are assuming a 41% reduction in that factor based on the EPA evaluations of that. And again, in the contingency plan, the DEP plan, that would be 0. In the preferred plan, we're again assuming that because it's quite well documented. So here's a preliminary draft. See how I wrote that in red? And see how I put draft over the other two in white? We are just beginning to talk about these, so I don't want anybody to think that decisions have been made. So this is a couple of examples, related examples for the Buzzards Bay side of town. There are a lot of colors here, and hopefully you can see some of them. So I'm going to start at the bottom of this legend. So the top one is Megansett Harbor, and the bottom one is Rand's Canal, which actually, if you look at the two maps, the watershed to Rand's Canal is immediately below the watershed to Megansett Harbor, and it's basically, it's a sub-watershed of Megansett Harbor, though they evaluated it separately. The green parcels, the parcels highlighted in green, have no current septic load and are not likely to develop. The orange ones have been converted to conservation since the Massachusetts Estuaries Project report and the TMDL were established. The yellow is existing nitrogen removing septic systems. So this evaluation takes into account where there are some existing nitrogen removing septic systems. Dark blue, I thought there was a little bit of aquaculture in here, but maybe not. Tiny bit. Okay. Anyway, not significant in this watershed. And then what everybody really wanted to focus on was the dark purple, which is the top color in the legend. Dark purple is the planned septic nitrogen reduction area. That's the preferred plan. Is The dark purple, and that's the septic nitrogen reduction area. The light purple, that's right below that in the legend and that you can also see in the figures, that's the town's contingency septic nitrogen reduction area. So one thing that I think I had mentioned before is that when the state evaluated these ponds, they used the United States Geologic Survey, USGS's watershed delineations for each of the coastal ponds. And within those watershed delineations, there are sub-watersheds. So for example, in Megansett, we're not showing the whole watershed because a lot of the watershed is in Bourne and is, while it affects this coastal pond, it is not the town's responsibility or control to remove the nitrogen there. So we're looking at nitrogen removal in Falmouth. And the upper portion, so unfortunately in this figure, we neglect, the sub-watershed line dropped off. But if you're familiar with Megansett Harbor, you know that there is this curve, very tight curve, that goes back to a smaller embayment in Bourne, and that is Squatigue Harbor. Squatigue Harbor is more nitrogen impaired than the rest of Megansett, and in fact, Megansett Outer Harbor is in good shape. So one of the things Kristen and this planning process has been doing is looking at not just the overall nitrogen load, but looking at the ongoing data collection. We have data on water quality at the Sentinel location for many, many years. And so in the outer Megansett, or in Megansett Harbor, where the state has set the load target, it actually has been meeting its nitrogen load targets for the last several years. However, Squatigue Harbor is still in rough shape and is not meeting its sub-target. You know, it's the target just for Squatigue Harbor. So you can see that for Megansett Harbor, we're really, for this town-preferred plan, we're talking about just requiring nitrogen-removing septic systems in that the properties closest to that Squatigue Harbor watershed shoreline. The contingency septic nitrogen reduction area is, again, in case some of the town's plan is not as effective as the town would like, or as the town is envisioning. This is the backup plan for additional properties that would be required to install denitrifying septic systems in the future.
George, go ahead.
Two brief questions. One, I thought I read in the regulations that are requiring all this, that if there's a shared thing between two towns, they have to submit a joint proposal or something. So,
Yeah.
And the second question, well, actually, so there's no sewers planned for either of these areas?
Correct.
Is that correct? And third, you said the contingencies are if things don't work out with them. So what's the test of whether it worked out? When does that happen?
So I don't have an answer for that yet, but that we will have to have in the plan. So the changes take time. Or the change in the water body takes time. So if the town implements this IA area, this denitrifying septic system requirement in the Squatigue Harbor watershed, we would then continue to monitor the water quality there at both of the location, at all, you know, the Megansett locations, and see over time what the response is within the water body. There are lots of factors that affect water quality, and this is of course not the only one, but we will have to come up with the plan will involve a suggested date, you know, a time period for reevaluating. I would suggest it would be something like 10 to 15 years after implementation.
And is there, at which point you're going to measure X, Y, and Z, and they have to be above or below A, B, and C? And do we know what X, Y, and Z are, let alone A, B, and C?
So, right, so we are continuing to use the numbers that were in the total maximum daily load reports, the TMDL reports from the state, which were based on Massachusetts Estuary Project reports before them. So what they did was identify a concentration of nitrogen at a Sentinel location and also at some sub-watershed locations that they felt would be restorative. If the nitrogen concentration at that location reaches the threshold concentration that they're recommending, then the idea was that the water quality would be satisfactorily good and the ecosystem would be in better shape. So we're relying on the numbers in the Massachusetts Estuaries Project report and the TMDL report.
So with this and with Uquoit Bay, we are relying on our neighboring towns producing and implementing a plan that affects our implementation because, for example, if Bourne does a good job, then maybe we won't need to do, we would not need to reach our contingency and might not even have to hit all our planned septic nitrogen. If Squeak Harbor is, for example, a major source of nitrogen to the Megansett that we are more responsible for, do we know the status of their planning and have?
So my understanding is that they took the first option, right? They're requiring, Kristen's more familiar with this than I am. No?
Mm-mm.
They backed out of that. They backed out of that. Do you want to talk for a minute about Bourne's planning? I haven't followed this as closely as,
Okay.
the Bourne planning as closely as Kristen has. Kristen Ratchin with Science Force.
Thanks.
Just for the recording, actually. if you
Yeah,
can-
Kristen Rafton with ScienceWares. So Bourne originally went with the IAs for all approach until they got a little bit more education that maybe 19 milligrams per liter and some of the existing IAs weren't going to do what they needed to do. So they stepped back from that and decided to develop watershed plans. They have 2 NSAs, I believe. They had developed a CWMP and submitted it to the state, and the state said, we don't really accept this, we want more. So they're still in the planning stages with what they want to do and need to do. Through this process, through Falmouth's watershed planning process, for Megansett in particular, and it happened with Wacoit too, but years ago, we've looked at the MEP water use in both Falmouth on individual parcel level, and then water use in Bourne, kind of at their big area level, because they didn't give us individual parcels. GHD has preliminarily determined an estimated portion that is Falmouth's responsibility based on water use numbers and septic loading. And gone back to the MEP, which also splits out the parcels by town. So for the Megansett and particularly the sub-embayment level, so Squeak, Megansett Harbor, Squeak, I think we're working on an estimate that Falmouth is responsible for 7% of the nitrogen reduction required in Squeak. The main channel, the main embayment, we're like 98%.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. So we'll just look at Rand's Canal quickly. Again, that if you look at this puzzle piece, it fits up right below the Megansett Harbor watershed. You see that the parcels around closest to Rand's Canal are in the dark purple septic nitrogen reduction area, and as you move away further from the watershed, you get to the light purple, that contingency plan. One thing you might notice here is that the contingency plan involves nitrogen removing septic systems on the upgradient side of Cedar Lake, a freshwater body. They're in the watershed to Rand's Canal, so that when when and if that requirement were employed, the town might want to consider that factor, those parcels are also in the watershed to a freshwater pond. The last bullet here says the Board of Health would make the final determination on the required septic nitrogen reduction areas. Again, we in this process, with the help of our consultants, are doing the math and the planning to say what would meet the TMDL, the total maximum daily load for nitrogen for the watershed. It's up to the Board of Health in the end. I, as wastewater superintendent, I don't have the enforcement ability for that. We can put it in the plan, we can give it to you guys to think about, but that's in the Board of Health's jurisdiction. So we will be providing this, and if the Board of Health wants to do it differently, this is basically a minimum or a suggested way of doing things, or will be the suggested way of doing things, but it's the Board of Health jurisdiction.
Do you see that as us promulgating a regulation that would have specific maps in it?
Yeah, so I know that you did an enormous amount of work over the past year and a half or so, looking at your septic nitrogen regulations, and I envision an update to that with a new map and or new maps with some phasing. So in these areas, these are not huge areas with the huge number of properties. The dark purple could likely be all one phase for these. But for some areas, it's a lot of parcels, and overall, it's going to be a lot of parcels. So I'm imagining that there would be phasing in that. Okay. So the goal is to get to a townwide map where we're not just looking individual watershed by watershed. Look at townwide where we're looking at these and how many parcels it is, and talk about phasing.
George?
Are you envisioning that existing homes with no other sort of point of contact with the Board of Health, they normally wouldn't have any contact, that we would be like issuing, is that envisioned in the watershed plan, would say, okay, we're going to mail to those houses, they need an update by X year? Or just waiting for those points where real estate transfer, repairs, any modifications to the house that require a septic permit, things like that? Which is envisioned by the planning process? Again,
that part is up to the Board of Health, but in order for this to be a part of the watershed plan, we have to say when it's going to be implemented by. So we can say phase 1 would remove X number of pounds of nitrogen and would be completed by X date, and phase 2 would remove and the plans are supposed to achieve 100% within 20 years. For some watersheds, that's more feasible than for others. One of the things about the IAs is that it's not like the sewer where for the sewer project, we need a town meeting appropriation and a ballot vote and the design period and the construction period and then the connection period. The IAs, it's a Board of Health regulation. And then how that gets, I mean, I know you talked a lot about this again in your last regulation discussion about, and tied it to new development and redevelopment that over a certain threshold. I think it will likely make sense to have a new threshold, a new additional threshold for these new areas.
You said that the areas are supposed to reach their TMDL in 10 years.
20.
20 years, good. 20 years from when?
From when you submit the permit.
When it's accepted or when you submitted?
That's a good question. When it's approved.
Okay.
So, and is there once you submit a watershed plan for an area, does the state have a certain amount of time where they have to say we accept this plan or we don't?
I don't remember. Do you remember if they have a timeframe? I believe they do, and I believe it's in their interest to make a decision on this so that the town moves forward. I don't remember what that timeframe is.
And how do you know TMDL is a mass, and we're not measuring any masses of anything, so how do you have any idea if you've met it or not?
It's an estimate based on all of these assumptions. And there are a lot of assumptions involved.
So every house is the same in terms of meeting the TMDL, whether 12 people live there or one person?
Based on, so we've assumed this planning is based on water use. We have looked at average water use 2021 to 2024.
For each house?
For all the properties in town, yes. And so we're not requiring different things of different properties based on water use, but we are in the calculation of nitrogen load removal. That's how these areas get to be the size and size they are, is assuming nitrogen removal based on a factor for effluent concentration from that septic system and the water use.
Okay.
In doing the calculations, I believe there was some assumption of additional development. Was that a percentage within each watershed? Like we assume there'll be 5% more land developed?
So we spent a lot of time looking at this, and it is, so we looked at what the town's water use, or what the water use is within these watersheds compared to what it was when the Massachusetts Estuaries Project reports were first issued. Those were also based on water use. And we've compared that new water use with what the Massachusetts Estuaries Project called build-out. And that was, the build-out was based on land use codes and zoning basically, and parcel area. And what we found was that, in fact, the town has not achieved build-out in any of the watersheds. And in fact, in most of those has not changed as much as was predicted over the time frame. So we are approximately using that same build-out number now, distributed throughout the watershed. It's a difficult, as you can imagine, it is a difficult or impossible thing to do, really, to know where development's really going to happen and what that's going to look like. So I did mention early on and again at the end of the presentation, the big thing that the town's going to need to, or a big thing the town's going to need to talk about is management of future development and redevelopment. Because in all of these impaired watersheds, any new development needs to be offset entirely, needs to go to zero, net zero, in order for the town not to have to do more work to meet the nitrogen load limit. So we are not, that's not addressed in what I'm showing you here. This does not include build out in these maps, but you can imagine that if a larger parcel in this area redevelops and triples its flow, if it's on the sewer, that would, which it's not in these areas, that would not impact the nitrogen load here. But if it's an IA system, the IA system improves the water quality coming from that parcel, but it doesn't eliminate it. So there would need to be additional offset because of that new development. So that's something we can plan for to a certain degree, but really it's more of a management thing going forward. The town needs a policy and a way of looking at that, at redevelopment and how that's managed in the future.
I am aware that you do need to go.
Yeah, it looks like Outfall's going to be a separate meeting. Unless
we want to run through.
So here's a question. Do we want to go through more of these?
I just have, so let's see. So that's all I have on the watershed plan is one more example and then a next steps.
Was that?
It's a good example because it shows some sewer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can, so this
Yeah.
is a South Coast watershed example. This is on the left, Great Pond, and on the right, Green Pond. And again, if you put, so these, the parcels you're seeing are within the watershed to that water body. So that's why it's split into two. But if you pair up these two figures, you can see that this is showing the Acapesket Peninsula being sewered. That watershed, that peninsula is both in the Great Pond watershed and the Green Pond watershed. So just like sewering Mara Vista, it helped Little Pond and to a lesser extent Great Pond. Sewering on Acapesket would help water quality in both, or reduce nitrogen load to both of those ponds. So this figure does not show phasing, but phasing will be an important future part of this. The bright pink that's on this figure, on these figures, is the preliminary draft sewer area for both of these watersheds. And you can see that it includes Acapesket, the Acapesket Peninsula, but it also includes some parcels north of Route 28. Route 28 is running roughly horizontally through here. And that is additional nitrogen load removal that's required to meet the math of the TMDL, but is not planned for the next phase for Great Pond. It's an additional phase of sewering, of future additional phase of sewering. And really the sewering is broken up into phases because of cost and overall impact to the town. So we can't do all the sewering at once, and so it has to be phased. The blue in this figure is the existing or on the way to existing sewering. This the southern part of Mara Vista Peninsula is already sewered. The northern part and this T-Ticket Path Peninsula is in the Great Pond Phase 1 project. So that will be sewered over the next, is being sewered over the next year and a half. And then properties will connect to it after that. And then the Acapesket Peninsula is what we've been calling for a long time, Great Pond Phase 2. You see that there is also a contingency sewer area here. That is,
Could you
again,
use your cursor to show us what you...
Just the
sure.
word
Okay, so
letters
this is,
RA.
can you see this
Yes.
up here? So
Yep.
this is the Acapesket Peninsula here, and this is the sewering that is proposed, the next phase for Great Pond and for Green Pond, when that happens. And then there's additional sewering here, which is a likely future phase, say 15 years later, for north of, this is Route 28 here, north of Route 28. If the assumptions that we've used for other nitrogen removing technologies do not pan out, then additional sewering beyond that could be required. And this light pink area here, so that's south of Jenkins Pond, between the other sewer area and Jenkins Pond, that could be a future sewer area. But it's because of the cost and the impact on the town overall, that is a phase 3, phase 4 later. You can see these, so the dark blue in these figures is aquaculture. And again, this is where the Marine Environmental Services Department has envisioned aquaculture. And it's not doing the lion's share of work here, but it is an important component of many of these plans. You can see that there's some of that dark blue aquaculture in both watersheds. There are also these dark purple parcels along primarily Green Pond, though there is some down here on the south side of Great Pond. And those are this preferred plan septic nitrogen reduction area. So the idea here is that overall, this peninsula to the east, Davisville Peninsula, is overall less densely developed than Acapesket or Mara Vista. And there is less nitrogen load removal required overall for Bournes Pond and Green Pond than there is for Great Pond. So the plan for Green Pond and for Bourne's Pond to the east does not involve anywhere near as much sewering as we're showing here for Acapesket between these two ponds. So in that case, we're looking at nitrogen removing septic systems along the properties that abut the pond. Because again, there's no attenuation there. Those are right alongside the pond, and putting those in would have the fastest, would cause the fastest improvement or nitrogen reduction for the pond. And those are the properties that stand the most to benefit from water quality improvements, all that kind of logic. But so the calculation of nitrogen removal for this, for Green Pond, includes the sewering. And you see some sewering up here around Mill Pond. Again, that could be a future phase sewering. It has not been, we have not been looking at that in the past. That is likely a future phase along with the rest of this north of Route 28. But that's additional nitrogen load removal for Green Pond. So the last slide on this was more discussion is needed, of course, of these presentation of the overall plan and options for all of the nitrogen sensitive areas. We need to look at overall schedule and phasing, cost, and financing options. How we pay for this is a huge part of the decision on what we do and how we implement it. We will need, as part of each of these plans, to define a, quote, responsible management entity, RME, for each implementation strategy. For sewers, it's the DPW, the wastewater division. For nitrogen removing septic systems, it's either the town's health department / Board of Health and or the county. There has been discussion of working with the county as an RME. The town can look at paying an outside consultant or contractor to do monitoring and even enforcement work. The town needs to have that discussion about not just what would remove the nitrogen, but how do we make that happen? How do we monitor it, make sure it's working? How do we enforce it?
So quick question, these are all essentially, we'll call them all one giant plan
Yep.
for the town. Does there need to be an overall management entity to take a look at each of these sub parts? Because otherwise the sewer stuff is going to be well managed, but
we hope so.
yeah, well, but trying to account for the accurately account for the aquaculture in light of the plan, I think we might want to say and think about that there needs to be one RME that then collects the information from the actual management entities. So there's one responsible, and then the different subcontracts, if you wish, whatever you want to call them, sub-management.
Yeah, so,
Yes,
I mean,
one ring to
honestly,
rule them all.
right now, the wastewater division, or DPW, is doing this planning on, and it wouldn't have to be that way. Another town division could have done this planning. But I do think that the RME, the important part is the RME for each of these nitrogen removing strategies has to have the authority to and the ability to enforce it and monitor it and report it. And the putting it all together, so that we need to do 5-year updates for the state after we submit the watershed permits. Somebody's going to have to put together that information in a plan, and it's a department head would need to manage it with the assistance of a consultant. I think that's less of an RME than a administrative.
Well, I mean, I could also envision a overarching entity saying, look, aquaculture, you've said you're not meeting your plan. Holding the different units, if you wish, to their plan. There needs to, and maybe that is just the town manager and the select board.
yeah, that's how I'd envision it, but,
Okay.
but I had not thought of it that way, so,
Okay.
interesting point. Land use and growth obviously needs more discussion as well. So that's the watershed management plan. Do you want to do a brief discussion of outfall?
Could we, and perhaps if you would skip to this, your Gantt chart, your schedule here,
Okay,
in that, unless, are members of the board familiar with the general idea of the outfall? And we looked at some of the, yeah, because I think we've already looked at some of this. And I know this is important to talk about in an open venue and continue to talk about it. And so I'm sorry to give you short shrift. I just cognizant of your time. And I think this gives answers or addresses some of Dr. George's questions, perhaps.
right, so this is the overall project schedule. The dashed line, next time I make this, I'll move it over to this next quadrant. We're a little further along, but basically the town has submitted a draft environmental impact report to the state at the end of January. And the comments on that, the comment deadline has been extended. It was originally August 21st. It has now been extended twice to September 18th is the final comment deadline on the draft environmental impact report. So the state, the Massachusetts Environmental MEPA, Environmental Policy Act Office, is accepting comments on the EIR until September 19th. Then, once they've received all those comments, they will draft a certificate which folds in what they see as the significant changes or things that need to be addressed for the final EIR. So the goal is to issue a final EIR by the end of the year. We've been working on permitting for a number of years. The most significant permit is the surface water discharge permit, called an NPDES permit. We've been working towards that for quite a while, but we will begin applying for that. The next important milestone, most important milestone here, is an appropriation at the April town meeting in 2026 for funds for design of the outfall project. 2027 for funds for design of the outfall project. So April 2027, and then it would need a ballot vote. We're looking for $7 million for design of the outfall pipe from the treatment plant down to the directional drilling location, and for the directional drilling of that outfall from Kite Park out to the discharge location. So that's what this X is here. We're looking at another appropriation in April of 2028 for construction, which at this time is estimated to be $80 million. That's what we've been estimating for quite a while now. And so we're looking to April of 2028 for a construction appropriation, which would, of course, also require a ballot vote in May. It would take several years to construct this outfall and the piping leading from the plant down to the discharge location. So there's quite a construction period in here. But early finish is 2031, late finish 2032.
So in concept, however, we could also appropriate money for design. Once this is approved, we could appropriate money for design of another part of the collection system.
We could.
And then, rather than waiting till 2031.
Yep, it is a lot of, so that's part of the financing discussion.
Right, that's a money, I understand
Yep.
that, but.
The capital plan does look at some rapid movement on the next phase of collection system construction, but the town needs to make the financing plan for that.
Right, okay.
I should say, though, we've been collecting data for this outfall project and doing the necessary evaluations for more than 3 years. We've had a tremendous number of meetings and interactions with all the related regulators for the outfall project. We have been presenting to lots of groups about the outfall project over the last several years. This project has a lot of, there's a lot of work has gone into it, and there's a lot of momentum for the outfall project. There is still some significant work to do. The draft environmental impact report is on the wastewater division's portion of the town's website. If you go to Department of Public Works, wastewater division, there's a whole section on the outfall and a whole section on the Great Pond Phase 1 project in particular. So anybody who's interested in looking at the outfall documents could go to the website. I am happy to come back another time and talk about the outfall project if the board is interested. There's a lot to, the watershed management plan is important as well, so we ended up focusing on that today. But if there are questions or concerns, I would want to talk about those soon.
Yes, George.
I have one just final consideration, because I see it coming down the line, is on the whole thing of predicting where development goes. There'll be quite a bit to do with the ADUs, since that now has been given almost as a right by the state. So I suspect we'll see a real uptick that otherwise wouldn't be there. And I don't know how you incorporate that into it. You consider a certain percentage you're going to do that, but we've seen, even as a board, we've seen more than I've seen in the last year, more than I've seen in my previous 20 years.
Okay.
I know you skipped over the data. We have data for the effectiveness of a sewer, Little Pond.
Yep.
Is it working?
Yeah, so this figure on the left is a photo of Little Pond, and in around 2016, 2017, the town completed the Little Pond sewer project, which sewered the Falmouth Heights portion, on the west side, Falmouth Heights portion that's contributing to Little Pond, and on the east side, Mara Vista. And those properties were connected, all of them, by 2018, 2019, I guess was the final ones. So it was a big project that the town completed, and those properties connected. And the graph on the right shows the concentration of nitrogen over time since all the connections were made in 2019. And you can see that nitrogen concentration has gone down significantly. The average nitrogen concentration at this, what's circled there is the Sentinel location. That's where the state established the threshold nitrogen concentration, which is here shown in red on the figure. This is the threshold we're trying to meet with this sewer project, and you can see we are on a trajectory that shows we appear to we're heading certainly in the right direction, and hopefully we'll be there. Within another couple
Is
of
that dotted
years.
line the model, or is that a fit?
No, this is data. So the dotted line is the linear.
Oh, it's a linear, okay.
Yeah. So it's showing the downward trend.
So that
But
just
the
gives us a time
dots
frame.
are average data for the year.
Right. This just gives us some time frame for being able to evaluate the effectiveness of different technologies. In this case, this is 100% removal, but you'd take us at least 5 years to figure out whether or not something's working.
Right, and in this case, there was, sewering, a lot of sewering immediately on both sides.
Right.
It's an excellent vision of what's to come from future nitrogen reductions.
Okay. Does anybody have any Do you have anything else you want to add in?
I'll show I want to make sure that folks are familiar with what we're planning to do. So this is we're planning to continue treating the wastewater at the main wastewater treatment facility that provides tertiary wastewater treatment, which means on top of the regular BOD removal and TSS removal, we're removing nitrogen down to about 3 milligrams per liter. And we have ultraviolet disinfection at the treatment plant. And the plan is to convey that wastewater down to Kite Park, 6 miles down from the wastewater treatment facility to Kite Park in Falmouth Heights. Outfall's designed for a future flow capacity of 3 million gallons per day average. The discharge would begin, of course, at a much lower number than that, at less than 710,000 gallons per day. That's what we're allowed under our current permit. And then the flow would increase to the outfall over time as additional sewer areas were added. We're just zooming in on the southern part of this outfall project map here, and you can see here's Kite Park in Falmouth Heights next to Falmouth Inner Harbor. So Kite Park is the location from which we would directionally drill to install the outfall. The horizontal directional drilling would significantly reduce the impacts to the environment and to the eelgrass and to water quality and all that from, obviously, if we were to open cut this. So the plan is to directionally drill from Kite Park out to it's about 2,300 feet south of Kite Park in Nantucket Sound. It's at the approximately 20-foot water depth contour. So it's about 20 feet of water. This green line is the measured edge or surveyed edge of the eelgrass meadow out there. So there is eelgrass in some locations, but between land and that green line, but there is no eelgrass measured in our survey beyond that. So we're well beyond the eelgrass meadows. When the outfall is available, the plan is to cease regular discharge to the ground at the main wastewater treatment facility. We've been discharging to the ground there for many, many years. We would plan to still keep some of those discharge beds as a backup location in case of, for example, a pipe break. Somebody digs up and hits the outfall pipe between here and there, in the roads. And we will expand the sewer areas to meet nitrogen load limits. So the outfall is a water quality improvement project, and one of the important evaluations that was done for the outfall project and that is required for the surface water discharge permit is called an anti-degradation evaluation. You need to look at whether this project will degrade the environment and in particular degrade the surface waters. And the conclusion from that evaluation, it's a very detailed evaluation, but the overall conclusion is this project will help, it will improve water quality in all the coastal ponds where it allows the town to expand the sewer area. And it will actually reduce Falmouth's discharge of nitrogen to Nantucket Sound from what it is right now. Obviously, it's a increase at a point location, but building this project would allow the town to, this figure shows septic systems in Falmouth. The pink is where we've already sewered, the existing sewer area. All the dots on this figure are existing septic systems. So the goal of the outfall project is to allow us to connect. Here's the Acapesca Peninsula, for example, the most densely developed part of Davisville. Here's Seacoast Shores. You can imagine that nitrogen from these septic systems is now moving into the coastal ponds and out through the mouth of the coastal pond and out into Nantucket Sound. We build this outfall pipe, and it allows us to do all this sewering that we were talking about and reduce that nitrogen load, not just to the coastal ponds, but also ultimately to Nantucket Sound. There is an enormous amount more information, a lot of evaluations done, but that is the, I guess I'd like to say one more thing, which is about the condition out here in the Sound. So we have a really good discharge location here in Falmouth because of the current the velocity of the water and our discharge location. We initially looked at Buzzards Bay discharge locations because it's closer to the treatment plant, but this figure shows in color the current speed, or how fast the water is moving. And dark blue is not very fast, is quite slow, and the lighter, the green is extremely fast. We are out here installing an outfall in this green area, which has a higher water velocity than anywhere in Buzzards Bay, anywhere in Cape Cod Bay. We have a very unusual location here, unusually good for an outfall location in that you get significant dispersion and mixing right at that location. We're not counting on that entirely. Obviously, we're still providing tertiary treatment, ultraviolet disinfection, but we also get the advantage of this significant dispersion right at the discharge location. So I apologize, I have to go to the select board
Can
meeting.
we just get the extra slides that you've shown today?
Sure. Yep.
That would be great.
So I had these as backup slides, and
Okay.
at the last minute was trying to pull them forward, hoping to give them, but I will send you all the backup slides, and I'm happy to come back and talk about it if you'd like at a future time.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it and chat. I think, I know there's a lot of different moving parts to this. There's a lot of different boards. Obviously, you're talking to the planning board and the select board. I think, just in general, I think it would be good to get all of the boards on the same page, certainly for information and possibly also for making some suggestions and thoughts and advice in terms of policy and things like that. So I hope that we can get this done this fall so that there can be input into any final draft and input into financial planning as well.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, thank you for a lot of work.
It's not just me. Thank you, though.
All right. We will move into our septic hearings. We're a little behind our original schedule. As Scott gets us established, our first hearing is for 93 Charting Park Road, innovative alternative technology approval request in a Falmouth regulated nitrogen area, proposed 3-bedroom house.
Is that the first one?
Yeah.
Good evening. I should probably get a chair with my name on it here. Seems like I've been here a bunch. I won't really get into this, but I'm...
Just for the record, just can you
Sorry.
give us
Yes.
your name? Sorry.
Chuck Rowland, Cape and Islands Engineering. Covering for Mark Dibb, representing the owners of 93 Trotting Park Road. We have a vacant parcel, and we're proposing a 3-bedroom septic with a Clean 2 nitro system, which is on your banner list, with a typical 3-bedroom septic. We've proposed 3 500-gallon chambers with crushed stone. Pretty sure this meets all of your criteria, and we're not asking for any variances. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes.
Can I just clarify who the owner is? The plan lists Richard Kinney, 93 Trotting Park. The form is signed by Farron Rabisa, and there's another reference somewhere that Farron Rabisa is at 91 Trotting Park Road, so I just want to clarify. I assume the address is 23. Is 93. But just trying to clarify who's who and which address it.
I do know it's Lot 2, 93 Trotting Park. So,
Yeah, the owner under general notes, it says owner, Farron Rabisa, 91 Trotting Park.
so that's I believe that it's a vacant lot and is being transferred, so oftentimes you have several different parties. So if someone's selling a parcel, an owner can be one person, and I can be working for a prospective buyer, and so I believe that we're working on this for Richard Kenny. I believe that the owner is the owner of 91, so that's.
And
So,
the form would need to be
so
signed
we would, I think, require a form for
by Mr. Kinney.
Mr. Kinney acknowledging, because the responsibilities of having an IA system.
We're happy to provide that, if that's something you can approve with, subject to the receipt.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that we get you the correct information.
Right, this is new.
Bill
This is on
And
Brady.
the
Yeah, it's a vacant
pits
parcel.
Are not in the other thing I noticed was that the test pits are not in the primary or reserve leaching area.
So the perk test was done in 2019, well before a lot of this work. We do have our typical note for any unsuitable material, note 8. We're happy to also make it contingent upon confirmation of soil condition at time of installation. Scott has to do an inspection as well. I believe this area has fairly consistent, good material. We're not really worried about it being 30, probably about 40 feet away from where the test pit is, but we're happy to add that as a condition as well.
You guys okay with this?
Make a motion to approve the use of the IA system at 93 Trident Park Road, provided that there is soil inspection done at the time of the installation, that there be observation port should be within 3 inches of grade in accordance with Title V, and their standard set of conditions.
And upon receipt of
And
the
upon receipt of the
owner's responsibility form
responsibility signed by the owner.
by Mr. Kinney, the intended
Right.
owner.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the use of the IA system for 93 Charting Park with 3 conditions: the soil inspection at the time of installation, receipt of the owner's responsibility, paperwork signed by the owner of the system, and inspection port to within 3 inches.
of final grade.
And that is for the denitrification chamber. Isn't there a?
No, the sampling port is on the tail end of that, but it should be called out on any plan.
Right, okay.
We usually do just have, you are right, obviously, George, you probably know those regs more than anybody, but we usually use the access, the covers to within 6 inches for the inspection port, but we're obviously happy to add that on the plan.
I think on future plans for, I know the nitro system, but should be, that is the sampling port, which is, I believe, the last chamber in that is where you take a sample for regulatory purposes.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the manufacturer does
It should be
specify.
called out.
Yeah, it should be called out in the plan, but I think the manufacturer does specify that it's either surface or within 3 inches, so, but yeah, just call it out in the plan, that's fine. All right, motion second, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Our next hearing is for Lot 24, Bonnie Lane, IA approval request and a Falmouth regular nitrogen, proposed 4-bedroom home.
Chuck Rowland, Cape and Islands Engineering. you can blame me for anything that you have on this one, as I was the engineer. We have a vacant parcel. We're proposing a 4-bedroom septic with a banner innovative alternative technology, clean to typical gravity system with a tank, KS2 submerged aeration and denitrification in the front yard with 3 500-gallon chambers and crushed stone. I do have test hole 1 and 2 as well as 3 and 4. Am I slacking, Scott?
Yeah, and again, same note on the plan, just to make sure that the correct port is called out for depth.
So on this one, I actually do have it called out in the cross-section view. Proposed 4-inch perforated pipe inspection port per 310 CMR 15240 13 set within 3 inches of natural grade. Which is...
Yes, I see that, yes.
Yep. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
The thing I noticed on this plan was just that the locus actually incorporates 2 parcels, not just the parcel of interest. It is, the orange line encompasses lots 24 and 25.
So the locus plan was created quite a while ago, and this lot 24 is a division of lot 24 and lot 25. So Harry Onesian owns lot 25, and we
Could
have...
you speak louder? Sorry.
Sure, so we have this parcel out, so obviously the locus plan shows both parcels. I do have the arrow pointing, I believe, to the right area in that.
To the north one.
So if you would like, I'm happy to show an extra line on the locus, just showing
It
the
took me a
one.
minute to sort out why it was shaped differently, but I got it.
Any other concerns to the board?
Same as before, the conditions, I accept the owner is, apparently the owner is the owner.
Yep, the form is good.
So a motion to approve with those same conditions with the exception of the owner.
Second.
So, you wanted a soil inspection? Is that what's,
Yeah, because you're not right in the area.
Okay.
It calls
It's
for,
close,
it's really close.
the code says in the area,
but, okay,
so
Okay.
it should be verified.
Okay.
right in the,
Where is the?
Oh, it's that right there, it's the little... Right. So, is there a second?
There
Yes.
was.
Oh, yes, motion and second to approve the use of the IA technology for lot 24 Bonnie Lane, under the condition that a soil inspection be verified at the time of installation. That's it.
That's it. The
Yeah.
inspection board
Inspection part is called up.
is
All right.
there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
So loud.
I know, you got really pumped up about that.
All right. Now we have a different one. 32 Eldridge Drive, septic system to a drinking water well setback relief request. Applicant seeks to reduce their drinking water well distance to their proposed septic system soil absorption from the required 100 feet in Title 5 in our well regulations down to 62 feet.
Chuck Roll and Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the owners of 32 Eldridge Drive. Suzanne Lyons with me here today. We request a variance from 310 CMR 15 and Falmouth Health Regulations for the separation distance requirements from a private well supply to a soil absorption system at 32 Eldridge. The applicant of the residentially zoned lot fronts McGann's at Harbor to the north, and the applicant proposes to upgrade the septic to a Title V septic system with no increase in flow for a 3-bedroom residence. Components include a typical gravity system of a 1,500-gallon septic tank, D-box 500-gallon chambers. One drinking well exists near the center of the lot. Septic system is designed along the eastern extent of the lot with 62-foot separation between the applicant's well and the leach field and 58 feet of separation between the applicant's well and the septic tank. The septic's located as far away as practical from the well while still maintaining the setbacks. So a variance of 38 feet from the leach field to the drinking well is being requested, as well as 42 feet for the tank. And so for the leach field, that is both a state and a Board of Health regulation for the 100-foot distance. So we have 62 feet proposed, which is a 38-foot waiver. And then for the tank, the Falmouth well regulations call for a 100-foot separation. We're proposing 58 feet. So that's a 42-foot separation, and the state requirement is 50 feet, so we've met that requirement. So we believe that we've met the regulations for conditions that apply to repair of septic systems within 100 feet of surface water bodies or wetlands, and I'll just go over the part that applies. Where no increased design flow is proposed and where the bottom elevation of the soil absorption system is greater than 10 feet from the adjusted seasonal high groundwater, where the maximum achievable horizontal separation between the SAS and the surface water or wetland is at least 50 feet, but less than 100 feet, the applicant shall demonstrate that they have achieved the maximum separation between the SAS and the resource. So, as shown on the plan, we've placed the leach field and the tank as far.
Could you use your cursor on that screen?
Sure. So, I've located the leach fields right here, which is as far away as possible from the existing well. We are only asking for variances from our own well. There's no town water in this area. We have more than 100 feet or more separation from all the abutters wells, which we have all located. So we believe that we've met maximum feasible compliance. We're not proposing any work other than upgrading the existing septic. And so I have my cursor right over the existing pit as shown right there. I've met all the other design requirements for Title V, as well as the Falmouth regulations for showing a reserve area for a 2,000-gallon future IA system.
So they're already using the drinking water well closer to their current standard Title V?
Yes, sir. So we're improving. In my opinion, we're improving the conditions with making it further away.
Do you have any water testing data for the current well?
I do not. I don't believe it's been done to my knowledge.
Testing for
Drinking water.
Bacteria, nitrate.
I had it tested
Yeah.
twice in probably the last 10 years.
Nitrate, it's in particular we'd be concerned about nitrates.
I don't know if that was part of it.
That is part of the standard well
It's
test.
part of the standard well test, yeah.
Well, do we have those
Do we
results?
have those results?
I didn't know I would be looking for those. I could try to find them.
That would be very good, because we want to make sure.
It was like 3-4 years ago I had
Right.
it tested.
Wow, you go that far without testing well?
What?
Since it's closer than,
So just to the owners, the concern we have, for your health and any of your visitors, is that you should, be testing the well on a very regular basis, especially when your current septic system is, much closer to the drinking water, than the state and town regulations require. And we would strongly recommend that. I have the well regulations. I don't think we can compel you, but.
Well, there's a variance being requested here, we
So
can
we
compel a
can,
test.
Yeah,
But we don't want to make the situation worse, we don't know what the situation is now.
right.
So I think prior to approving something now, we kind of need to know
Right.
whether the well is in good shape now
With the current test?
with the current test, yes.
And that's-
Because the system this actual system is close or as close as what we're now proposing.
Yes.
We don't know whether what is in there now is not,
Already
It's technically possible.
is, right. We don't know whether that's impacting that well at this point. So until we know that, we should not be varying a state regulation until we have some indication of the water quality that's there now.
Yes.
Because if the well is impacted at this point, I certainly wouldn't be sort of inclined to say, oh yeah, put one right at the same place, without doing something else to improve the,
Water.
what's going into the ground near their well.
Yes.
Relocate the well.
Well,
There's not a
it's
lot of,
relocate
there's
the
not a
well
lot of
or-
options on that front.
Relocate the well or treatment at the place. But right now, if you knew that that had 15 milligrams per liter nitrate, I would say it's being impacted by a septic system. The most likely one would be the closest one, or one up gradient. But I don't think we can vary a state regulation for a drinking water potable
Right.
well without
Without
knowing
testing.
what that well is presently doing.
Right.
In a situation very similar to what we're about to approve.
So, do you understand,
Yeah.
sorry, right,
I
okay.
understand.
Just being, yeah, it's, we're being asked to vary more than just our local regulations. This is a state, there's 2 state laws involved in this, so we want to be protective of you and your visitors.
So through the chair,
Continuing
may I ask,
this.
is this critical at this point? Are you backing up? What's the purpose of the repair?
Nothing.
The-
You know, if we want to sell it, my husband's 78, we've owned the house since 1950s. It's a 1910 cottage. We're the only one left in the area.
Okay.
There's big mansions all around us, and we just thought we would do the right thing because it's a cesspool. We understand, the problem is it's a very confined lot, it's on the cliff out to Magansett Harbor, and we just wanted to see basically what, you know, paid $8,000 to find out where I could put it, come here, find out what's the good thing, what's the right thing to do.
In all likelihood, that water's heading in another direction, down toward the water. All your wastewater's going right that way. But in the event that it's not, we need to have some proof of that before we would approve this. So
Yeah.
most likely, you're not gonna show any influence by a septic in that area because down gradient, if you, all of those systems, it's heading toward the open water. But we need to do that, so,
I mean, the other warning I should provide to you is that, as you've heard, the town is in the midst of,
Yes, I heard that tonight.
yes, and I don't have the exact map on the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure in this area that this whole watershed is actually slated for 100% requirement for IAs in order to meet the, now, but admittedly, that was about 6 months ago, and there've been some refinements on those numbers, so I just want to give you a heads up that at some point in some time frame that we're still not certain about, there may be a requirement for installation of a denitrifying system in this.
So it's good to do.
And it might be, well,
So would a continuance until you can find the.
Hold on,
retest
can I ask a couple of quick questions
sure,
here? So, if, let's say that we were to find that the well is not potable, with that, then you wouldn't be requiring that the septic be changed. I'm assuming you would people would have to put a filtration system on the actual well.
Well, there's a lot of options when you find a well that's not potable. It
So-
has to be, and of course, if, in the unlikelihood, but if they found out that that well was contaminated with nitrate or bacteria, more likely just nitrate, then their thoughts of selling the house, that would be a disclosure to somebody that there's non-potable water source there. So the ways to think about that would be treatment on the system itself, which would be ultraviolet light, and since it's nitrate, I don't think they're gonna get out of a nitrate plume if they're in it right now. So I think that opens up a whole new can of worms that we should be thinking about until we get a water test.
So, and that goes back to my point is, what bearing does the results of the water quality have on this board? So if we decide that it's not potable, then that's kind of like a whole different discussion as to what's going on with the septic.
Then it's what is the source? And right now, the most likely source is us varying the state regulation by so many feet. So then we'd have to decide, what do you do with that? Bring bottled water, put one in there for a treatment system, have somebody find out where that nitrate's coming from. But I don't think we need to do anything until we get that information. But we cannot just carte blanche say, okay, put that system in, we'll live with whatever they get in the water. We need to know that piece of information.
Do you live there full-time, or?
I was there part-time, and wouldn't I be sick if I drank the water and it was not portable? Because I shower, wash, brush my teeth in that water.
Well, potable is defined by more than what would make you sick acutely.
Yeah. Okay, I did think I had it tested 3 years ago. I'm happy to have it tested again. Not a problem for me. Where do you go get it tested? I had it in Middleborough.
We'll figure it out. We'll
You
figure it
can, I've got,
I'll
the
talk to
health
Scott
department
tomorrow.
has the kids.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll see you
In a
soon.
courier service.
I'll see you soon.
So we can continue
To
to,
move to
Finding that
continue.
there's not an immediate need right now, that I would move to continue.
there's a motion and a second to continue
Until such time we find out.
until we have some additional data on the well.
And then
Yeah,
the
I have
butters been notified
no idea how
already.
long that takes.
There's no setback variances. This is just a
There's
well variance.
A well variance, a setback to Title V. As the agent do, abutters need to be notified when there is a Title V variance being requested. Because abutters should be notified.
It's none of their business, but yeah, probably, perhaps. It's absolutely none of their business because the septic
Well,
system,
I get it.
Right.
It's none of their business, but I'm asking, I guess, what
well,
Title
the
V
system-
requires when there is a variance required.
well, that'd be like a variance from your own foundation, so I would say no. That would be like a variance from, an internal variance as opposed to a variance from a property line, which would obviously need it, in my opinion, but you can certainly notify abutters.
Well, there's no public water in this area yet. And it's an area where obviously there's a lot of septic systems and wells on the same property here. This by definition, by the way, is a nitrogen sensitive area because for drinking water.
Drinking water, right.
purposes.
Yeah, so it's a zone two, they're all their own
Yes,
zone twos.
they're all in
Yeah.
zone two.
Yeah, you couldn't have more bedrooms, correct.
So the motion to continue.
Which was seconded.
Right, which is
Yep.
seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna give her a kit on the way out, okay?
Right.
Oh, good.
Great.
So that way you
Yeah.
don't have to come back, let's grab a kit.
Thanks, Beth.
And it usually takes a couple weeks probably to get your data.
Thank you.
So,
You can ask
not
questions.
about this, but it.
I think the abutter notification was more like, you got wells in this area and
Usually
this
we just-
person has an issue, and maybe you ought to be starting thinking about starting a larger process.
And if nobody's been checking their wells in
Right.
forever. So, it sounds like she said she's here in the summer, and maybe he isn't ever here. So I'm wondering, if we think about the distance between a septic system and a well, and there's one person there part-time, and they sell the house and a family of four moves in
It's a
full-time,
very different
this is a whole.
exposure.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, that's what we have to think about.
Yeah.
It's not, this is
but
always the
I'm
challenge.
thinking about it, and I
Right.
have no knowledge that enables me to think about it in a quantitative or useful way. Do we have any regulations about any of this stuff with drinking water wells?
Yeah, it's 100
100
foot.
feet.
Yeah.
No, about frequency
Oh.
of testing. Because, as I said, if it gets tested when it changes hands, and it goes from one summertime resident to a family of four living there full-time,
Yep.
and it doesn't get tested again until it changes hands again.
I
That
think the
doesn't
major
seem a very
disclosure is that
useful-
you have a well, and you're in an area of wells. So the buyer is aware that there's wells, and that there's now, this will be with the deed, a variance to that well thing. So, yeah, you cannot make people test their own well. You only test them on those critical points where they come to the Board of Health for permit. Or if they're serving more than, I think, 10 people a year or something on, or 10 people a day in a normal thing, you become a non-community source well.
I mean,
A gas station that had a water fountain out front
Yeah,
would be a public supply well.
well,
A
so,
it
non-community.
just seems
So the
like
other place
it's a
the-
matter of actual health.
well,
This is much more
yes.
fundamental than what we almost ever do.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
yet we
Yes,
don't regulate it, it sounds like.
it's sort of like a house. You cannot go into a house to determine a condition to a danger unless you can have some other legal access to the house.
Right.
And there are a lot of things out there that could endanger health that are in people's houses, I'm sure. And we won't get to see them unless they rent a house or a tenant comes and complains.
Right. Well,
The owner self-reports.
so, this does bring us to our next item, which is wells.
Yes.
It naturally flows into our next item. And in particular, if you look at, it, we were provided with a nice set of regulations from other towns. And in particular, what is not in our regulations is the requirement for a well of any property that is rented to be tested on an annual
Right.
basis.
Yeah.
Short-term
Which is
rental.
where, whether it's short-term or
Short-term or
long-term, it
long-term.
doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's addresses your question of if it's your own property and you're not testing your well, in some sense, that's on your own head.
Yes.
And that's how the United States works. However, if you are providing water to other people, or if you are selling and conveying your house, then there could be a well testing requirement. However, I do not believe, as I read our regulations, I do not believe that we have that in our regulations.
No, we don't.
I think
And
we,
also, quite apart from the libertarian general freedom of everything, I'm not suggesting that we make people do stuff, but I'm pretty certain most people just don't ever think about it.
right.
They buy a house, the well gets tested, and they never think about it again. It's not that, so
I think it depends.
sure it depends, but I mean,
A lot of people
a
don't think
lot of
about it.
people are not, and I just would need some encouragement or at least a periodic.
I think that's actually, that may not be a correct assumption. We're in an
fine.
area, well, no, the reason I say that is we're in an area of very, 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 very few drinking water wells. I mean, I would say,
Compared to the general.
I would say almost vanishingly few drinking water wells. Compared to places, for example, in Maine, where I have family living, and people are very aware of their wells
Wellfleet,
and test
Truro,
them.
Easton.
And test them on a regular basis, because it is the culture in town when you're on a drinking water well. Does not mean, we're not responsible for them, that's on those towns. We are responsible for Falmouth.
Yeah.
And so it does beg the question as to how many people who are on drinking water wells in Falmouth get them
Oh,
tested on a regular basis, and
Or ever. And if, there are some things where if you test, whether the test was required or not, you need to report. Is there anything like that for drinking water well tests?
only on well completion.
Okay.
I do not believe that we require it to report back to the health department, for example, or the water department on property transfer.
No.
So, it's only on well completion, and it
Right.
should be attached to the
Well, when there's a well permit, there's an initial test.
Right.
that's done.
Mhm. Or like alteration.
But I think it certainly bears, we should think about rental properties.
For sure. I
Yes.
think we should think about a lot of things. I mean, looking at some of these other
holy cow.
And I
towns, there's a big difference
Didn't get
in,
to the.
oh, well, I mean, you can
Yes,
kind
Yes,
of
you could, the
do
way,
this
yes,
and realize,
yes.
yeah.
That alone, I did get to,
Yeah. and
which
sort
was
of-
one of the reasons I ended
So-
4 hours with the Bank of America.
So, obviously, when comparing our well regulations with the other towns,
Mhm.
including Bourne's, which is,
Yeah,
we are, we do not have
Sparse and
we could,
requirement.
we could use
sparse
some
in our
additional,
requirements and details.
Yes.
And, it is, at this point, I would be surprised if there were drinking water wells being drilled in Falmouth. But it's possible. I mean, I think would be irrigation wells, yes, but not,
Right.
but very few, I certainly haven't seen variances, and this is a good question for Scott.
For Scott,
To
yeah.
say, how many drinking water well
Permit
permits
applications are you
applications
getting?
have you seen in the
Right.
last 5 years?
right.
In my tenure, it's probably a handful of wells.
But they only come to us
Variances.
if they're
for
variants.
Right,
Yeah,
for drinking
And
water.
you only really need to hold a permit, I think, if you're replacing a well, if
Right.
you move it more than so many
5
feet
feet.
from its original.
It's 5 feet. So that would be a question right now for as soon as Scott gets back.
But
To
we're-
ask him if he has any knowledge of how many drinking water wells, because that would be, reading these other regulations, what I did note was that there's very few regulations for irrigation wells. Almost all of these regulations reference potable water. Very, very few of them reference non-potable water.
well, a lot of them at the very least, establish their setbacks in nice,
There's-
clean tables for irrigation and private, and in some cases geothermal.
Yes.
And, I mean, we should actually consider that as well. I don't know if
We have
geothermal wells
one
are coming around.
Yeah.
Why do we care about the water quality of a geothermal well? Isn't it a closed system that?
It should be a closed system, yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea why you'd ever want to, if you'd ever particularly care about
I
it,
mean-
except, you know, the Bourne is relevant in terms of the fact that they do not allow wells in plumes.
Right, and Stowe is the same way.
I'm sorry, what? Stowe?
Stowe and Dartmouth. Dartmouth has
Oh.
a setback to MCP sites, which is actually massive. I don't know how they can install any wells in Dartmouth, because it's like 25, mass contingency plan, it's for contaminated properties. And their setback to that is 2,500 feet.
2,500?
2,500,
Because
which is, I
Bourne
mean,
is 400 feet.
right.
I guess since Falmouth is kind of unique in not having many, we should focus on maybe, as far as testing requirements, I think should focus on those properties that are a risk to the general public and not just the person that's
Right.
got the well. So rental properties and things like that.
Right.
And
So,
then focus on, if there's any monitoring requirements you're thinking about, it should be on those.
that, I mean, yeah, that was the sort of immediate change I was thinking about. Scott, we have a question. I don't know if you, do you happen to know how many drinking water well permits have been issued in the last
Few years.
few years?
Not many. Oh,
That's
Drinking
about-
water
Drinking
wells?
water.
Drinking water.
Drinking.
off the top of my head, less than that.
That's about,
Maybe, yeah, max. And we have only about 150 to 200 drinking water wells in town.
That's more than I thought, actually.
No, because you get a cluster, like that one right there, I counted up the neighborhood,
Yeah.
it's 26 of them are just in that
Okay.
neighborhood alone. Percival Road has some, toxic Road, North Aquay, I think I said Percival. So there's like Courier Road, there's like
Courier,
sections of
yeah.
town that are on wells. You add that up, you get to 150 real quick, right? It's like 5 or 6 neighborhoods, 7 neighborhoods. It's the loose ones that decided never to take town water. You know, when town water was offered, let's say off of Red Brook Road, you know, to Cedar Overlook in the 90s, late 90s, some people may have said no. That's where I'd have to go street by street to
Right.
figure it out, because the records are just, but,
so
But to
how
answer your
far
question
is
about-
town water from this particular neighborhood?
it's a private road, so it never was brought up the road, I'd say 200, 300 feet.
I mean, and I believe in that neighborhood, they're not paved roads either. I think
Correct.
they're
Right.
all gravel.
Yeah, so once you get past the paved road, it's
Yeah.
all, it's wells. Well, there's 26 of them in that neighborhood, all in wells. I actually found one on Seacoast Shores.
Yeah, that's maybe.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't have
Yeah.
thought on Seacoast Shores they would be, they hooked the town water a generation ago, but that person decided not to.
Right.
We found it by happenstance.
So, yeah, what we were just talking about when you were out was, you know, the testing of private wells, drinking water wells.
Well, we always recommend it be done annually.
Well, we recommend it, we're not, you know, it's not required, but what we, I think, are
For like rental property?
thinking about is for rental properties.
Short-term rentals, we can put that on the
Or
application.
long-term,
Yeah.
any sort of rental.
Yeah.
Well, we issue both kinds, so anything we issue a rental permit,
Right.
both
As a-
rentals, because we are working on a separate short-term rental
So,
application.
Do we know about long-term rentals at all?
But they're required to rent, they're required to register
Register.
with us, but I don't know where they are, like,
yeah,
It's- short-term rental will have a company come out and find them through Airbnb, but good luck trying to do that word-of-mouth rentals. You know, I mean, I can't tell you who's renting who.
Long-term rentals, do they have to renew every year?
Yeah, right now, it's an annual for all rentals, it's
Right,
clumped
so
into the same.
requiring a well test each time they renew would be wise.
For ones that are that are served by town water?
Right.
Well, you just check off you have town water or well water.
Right.
If
Right.
well water, you go to the if-then statement, then provide us a
Right.
copy of your well test.
Right,
Yep.
so I mean, I would, propose that to be part
Add it
of,
to
become
the
part of our,
regulation.
add it to our well regulations.
I feel like we could use an overhaul. of
Yeah,
these
well, that's what we've talked
I
about.
I read some, and he provided you some, do you have some?
I we really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Those are very
Really thorough.
comprehensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through, the ones I thought you might like, I
Yeah.
included in there.
Um,
I think you would ask for Stowe specifically,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And an awful lot of these is well construction and, alterations. And, I mean, we're seeing mostly irrigation well requests, so, I would be surprised, to be honest, I'd really be surprised if we saw very many more, drinking water well requests.
But if we,
Well, do you see them if they just replacing a well? They don't need a permit if
If it's
they're
within 5
going
feet.
in the
It's within
same
5 feet,
spot.
yeah.
That's essentially what's gonna happen to all of them, that's why you don't really see them either. If it says in that reg, if the well's being, like if you have to replace your well, but it's within 5 feet of the existing well, you don't need to get a permit for it.
and they get replaced when they just go dry.
Dry, replace a pump head, whatever,
Ah, nice.
the well itself. yeah.
Generally speaking, you really hope you don't have to re-drill a well, they're expensive.
Yes.
Mhm.
And if you're.
I mean, if the pump goes, you don't have to
That's not
re-drill
gonna
it.
require, but if you have to
Yeah.
re-drill the well, which doesn't, usually I think you're just replacing the bits on it rather than replacing the
Right.
well itself.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And in certain parts of town, you just couldn't put a well in it.
Was that?
You can't, in certain parts of town, you can't put a well in anyway, the moraine would be a
Right.
nightmare.
Right.
Um,
But I mean, similar to how Bourne has put a prohibition on installing wells near the landfill, we could put something in here that, wells within the
Oh,
joint base plume or whatever,
In the baseball fields.
possibly the baseball fields, yeah. Well, those,
It's all
known
conservation.
MCP disposal sites
Right.
would, they're easy to call out in a regulation. It's not easy to explain to people how they have to research them.
If you're gonna refer to a map, I actually have to create the map, it has to be part of the regulation itself.
Right, and it would change every year potentially.
Well, how far do we want to go with this?
I mean, we've got some really good examples that, but it will take effort to,
Right. Somebody's going to
even
make
if we
this effort.
almost wholesale take somebody else's regulation and incorporate
Well,
it.
I guess what did we get? 4 sets, 3 sets? 4.
4.
4
Right.
sets. And perusing them, I mean, they go from down to the outside lash to more general. I mean, Dartmouth was pretty good, but
Yeah, I mean, the question is, do we want to, go into the nitty-gritty of the well design requirements? Do we want to just say wells, we say that anything that has, anything that's in the drinking water, the state drinking water regulations, maximum contaminant level tables is what you would need to test for, rather than calling out in our regulations what things need to be tested for. So, we
Which is
could say
troubling.
that, look, everything that the state
has an MCL
has an MCL for,
for public waters, then,
for,
because the MCLs are really for public water supplies. So it's sort of like nitrate. I mean, there is no standard for a private well. It's just using the MCL for 10 milligrams per liter for public supply wells.
right, because but that's presumably, the MCL is designed to be protective of individual health over a certain,
Right,
Period of
but I
time.
guess what I'm saying is, for public supply, there's a whole range of things that they have to test for. And now even PFAS is included in
Right.
some. So do we want to make them do that whole suite? Because it's a pretty expensive suite, for instance, once a year for rental. That's a pretty extensive suite of sampling you'd have to do.
Right.
Or do you just the normal bacteria, nitrate, conductivity, copper, lead, maybe
Right on.
radon?
Yeah, I mean,
If you need to go.
Yeah, sorry.
I think that there are a lot of MCLs and
Yeah.
MMCLs.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them that if you don't have any reason to believe you're near a
Right.
disposal site, they're not applicable, right? Like
Arsenic.
VOCs. Yeah, there's a
I
lot
mean,
of,
you test for it maybe in Maine or New Hampshire, but you wouldn't test for it down here.
so it feels like we should have a specific subset list and then pull in any additional contaminants that might be suspected to be, yeah?
Yeah, the other issue is that what's the lab testing for? Like, you know, you already have a well, sort of set, standard well test that the county lab does.
Mhm.
So anything you want to add, we got to make sure the lab's going to be able to handle it, because that's going to be a
Well, right now they have also what they call, I think, the real estate kit. Where
Yeah,
they
which has got
look-
VOCs in it.
They look at
Yes.
Yeah.
VOCs.
And does that have PFAS in it, do you know?
No,
No.
Okay. I mean, because that would be on my debate would be, do we require, PFAS testing? Because even though we find out more realistically, the PFAS numbers are ridiculously low, but they're making very, 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 very conservative estimations in large part because of the uncertainty, but also they're looking at 40 years of exposure to drinking water. And so,
Well, the exposure assumptions are the same for any contaminant, not just PFAS. Like they're applying consistent. It's just the toxicity is higher.
well, it's the uncertainty factors that they're adding. They're putting in factors because it's hand wavy right now. It's very hand wavy right now still. And so they're putting in uncertainty factors of like 100, and then they add another 2.3 just because.
Oh, EPA?
Yeah,
mean-
so, and that then is translated to,
Mhm.
back and forth between the
Right.
state and the EPA, which is why they're very, very, very low, just because they're like, we don't know. So, and if you're thinking about a rental property, somebody's there short-term, certainly transiently. Long-term, yeah, they could be renting for a
It
decade.
could be, yeah.
It's true.
so what I would suggest, I'll just throw it out there, we have 4 regulation sets that we've looked at. We
Mhm.
probably want to launch into one of them.
Pick one, yeah.
So why don't we come back with our candidate and why the next meeting, or
Okay.
the next
Sure.
meeting we talk about this, and see where we want to start. Because what we have is too bare bones.
It is.
Is what everybody would think.
Yeah.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
Doesn't address rentals, doesn't really guide folks toward what type of sampling. Some of these go so much in depth to it
Yeah.
that they're virtually hard to regulate. I can't imagine the enforcement in a town going that far. So somewhere between Falmouth and these 4 towns, and maybe using one of them as a base
Yeah.
going forward.
Something that is clean, reads well, and feels relevant. But the other thing, Jed, as we contemplate this and think about what we might want to require and whether PFAS would be part of it, properties interested in installing wells in the Joint Base Cape Cod plume, the Acushnet plume, like we can submit that inquiry right to them and they will make that judgment, right?
You mean
Base-
the
Joint Base, the Air Force.
the Air Force?
Yes, and/or test, if there's an existing well on the property, they should be testing it.
Yeah, if I recall,
If they're in the Acushnet Valley.
right, so that they were going to be verifying all of the properties, whether or not they had a well
Over the
or
next
not,
7 years.
over the next 7 years.
Yes.
6,000, 4,000 properties, 6,000 properties.
I think it was 6,000 properties, but they already.
Yes, over an extended
Yes.
period of time, yes, and that's,
Right,
there are funding constraints because the military funding issues.
right.
They have offered for technical consultation anytime anybody wants to either put a well or modify a well.
Right.
The question is, those existing wells, they want to verify them, possibly test them, but they just want to know, they would probably test them only if they are at a known plume depth, is my guess.
Yeah, I've got to look again at their cross-sectional
Right.
Concentration visualizations for
Particularly for the
downgrading.
PFAS.
But it's hard because they're so small. It's hard to actually see.
Yeah, we need to ask
But-
for a bigger version of that, maybe.
Also, I mean, a well that's pumping could over time affect the plume. So
I mean,
we have
that
to
was
be
one of the
careful
questions
with
that I did ask, and
Right.
the only, I mean, I honestly think that an individual property, given how much, based on the USGS water flow maps and the description of the outfall pipe effects on, or lack of effects on the groundwater, and that's diverting 3 million gallons a day from the individual groundwater, that it's unlikely that anybody's individual house irrigation system is going to have any effect on the.
Substantially moving the needle.
They even suggested even the golf courses.
They thought that even the
Right.
golf courses would be
Right.
done. The golf courses are regulated by the DEP in terms of their water pumping.
They're also
But
sources of PFAS
we
potentially.
can ask them or the DEP for their pumping records to see, first of all, or their well records to see how deep those are. And I think that's,
But we probably don't need to get into that.
I don't know if we need to get into that
Yeah.
or not. I mean, I don't know what we would do.
right.
other
What
than
they suggested was that
It's not going to impact.
it's not, yeah.
Right.
They
I think these-
anticipated it wasn't, the only thing that might impact is that there's an additional drinking water well.
Yeah, so I guess where I was headed with the PFAS sampling is in the area where we know it's a concern, we can think about that as one particular area. We may have an option with the Air Force making decisions there. Outside that, we have to be thoughtful of the fact that, most of these properties are on septic systems, and septic systems are very real sources of PFAS.
Right.
It's very
More and more.
common to have concentrations above the MCL associated with nearby septic systems.
Right.
So we might have a lot of, if we started to require that testing, we might have a lot of
Right.
positive detection.
I mean, I do know that there is real concern as we are continuing in a drought with the use of irrigation at all in town for private residences. And recent comments by the water superintendent, who is in front of the select board, probably as we speak, suggest that there may be some action from the select board on more stringent regulations or enforcement of the current irrigation well usages, which we have in here that in theory, every irrigation wells are supposed to follow the irrigation restrictions that are town-wide, that are recommended or required by the state when we're in a particular drought level. But clearly, nobody really knows that. In fact, based on public comments from the water superintendent, he didn't actually understand that either. We could, in this discussion and in revision of it, we could emphasize some of those water use restrictions as well.
Yep.
I mean, we go in and out of a drought I think the last significant one was about 2016, 2017. So it might be every 8 years, but climate change is gonna, I don't know what it's gonna do to us, so I don't,
Yeah, so I agree, George, that we should each kind of home in on regulation that we think is a good template.
So motion to put it on the next meeting
okay.
for at least some discussion as far as which one we want
Right.
to sort of use as
Just-
our backbone.
I mean, does somebody wanna take a lead on this? No. Okay, we
Well-
can make it a joint action, that's
Yeah,
fine.
let's
That's fine.
see what that's gonna
No, I
look
just
like and
figured I'd
figure
ask.
out, yeah.
Okay,
And I have to say,
Don't,
with-
aren't we gonna get a new person? Clearly, they're responsible for this.
but
Clearly, they
with the
should do
fairness thing, I'm
oh, yes,
way over
you're
my
right, okay.
head.
Oh, well, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
and to anybody who happens to be entertained at the end of this Board of Health meeting, applications are still open for the vacant seat in the Board of Health.
And it doesn't prohibit people from the press applying. Just saying.
I mean, better,
Well, there's
if you're
only
gonna
two people in the
apply,
audience, so
I
I'm
mean,
thinking, what the heck, we're not
we
going to-
very, I mean,
I'm just sitting here warming up, that's all.
all right. All right. Let's move on. In the interest of time, I'm gonna try to keep this next one a little briefer, maybe, because we have talked about it. We do have discussions on the revisions to our health regulations, particularly the IASIS septic regulations. Clearly, based on the outfall discussion, we are at some point going to have to revise this anyway in terms of the plans. And the question is that something that we want to start recontemplating now?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah,
because we need to move
Yes.
fast
we need to
on
catch some.
the whole thing. What we have done in the more recent past, I think, is put the health agent in that position, apparently really confused the public
Yep.
about it.
yeah.
And I think we just need to be clearer and, I think it's a hard choice of when we require IA systems, but there were two suggestions I thought Amy made. One was somebody right on the water. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's an impact and abatement, and you're right on it. I think we could turn the ratchet up a little on that one.
Okay.
Like any increase in floor area over 25% or whatever we come up with, but we definitely, I mean, there's gonna be this whole thing about, oh yeah, that's not a bedroom, that's, a laundry room, a big, very big laundry room, and an exercise room, and a library, and of course I needed a sewing room too. And I'm sorry, in perpetuity, those things are gonna migrate to bedrooms. If you could use it as a bedroom, you'll use it as a bedroom. So I think if we were gonna focus on those areas, we will most likely ever have to really require these. They'll be on the water, in sensitive watersheds, where sewer's not going to be there for the next, I'd say 10 years.
10.
And it
Yeah.
sounds like, from what Amy said, there's essentially nothing that's going to be in the next 15 years.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's what we talked about at the end of in terms of sequencing, and it depends on the budget of the town. The outfall pipe, we'll say completion, say 31, 32. But in theory, depending on how quickly the town spends money, there could be sewering done and finished and turned on by 32. Because,
Yep.
yes.
35,
Yes, it could be, and we
30.
could have the second coming also. But
No, I
I
actually
think,
think that,
We're not putting an outfall pipe and then sitting around
not
Diddling
doing
around,
anything.
not putting,
Right.
not adding to it.
Right.
Right.
That's just not the way it's gonna
That's-
happen. I think Acapesca's done in 10, or
I
they're gonna
think by,
choose 30 years.
I think by 33, 34,
You should be planning them
the
in
next
tandem.
phase.
It's really gonna depend on money.
Oh.
But
Right.
if you're not, what are you building an outfall plant to
Everything
slowly
relates.
over the next 60 years throw sewer in?
Right.
But it's
So-
not just that, we have to comply with the watershed
Yes.
management plans that we're
Yes.
going to be submitting.
Right.
And
It's
also,
okay.
note where the responsibility just fell tonight for that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I mean, that,
I know.
I don't know, if I wrote that a big red, I mean,
Right.
oh
So-
my goodness.
So, I mean, in terms of, a lot of that, we already have draft maps of where the town's preferred IAs are going to be. And we could say, as you said, a lot of them would say within 200 feet of, or 100 feet
Yeah.
of any nitrogen-sensitive
Sensitive.
water body.
Yeah,
And the next thing will be, in how many years will it be there?
Yes.
Because I
Yeah, I don't
think,
want to do seacoast.
I think what I'm hearing is pretty darn ambitious. It's not gonna get there that fast. I know, you build a pipe, you have to get subscribers just to keep the thing going.
So in the map, all the purple, the dark purple.
Right.
Some of the watersheds don't really need a lot, some of them do, right? So that's- you see Great Pond, Hoyt's really bad too. You're obviously gonna have separate triggers for that. You want them in ASAP, right? But if they're in yellow, we shouldn't be like, oh my God, you went up by 25%, put it in an IA, or are you? So you're gonna ignore the purple and just say you're in that watershed and it's gonna be building permits, or what? That's the other thing you have to decide is, are you gonna discern between these future maps of who's absolutely gonna need it versus those who probably aren't gonna need it, like upstream and wild. Once you got
Yeah.
past Rand's
Right.
Canal, that was all yellow, right? That was all colored out. That was just normal.
You have to, I can't remember the color coding,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for
Yeah.
every
Yeah,
map. So
buff.
could you refer to?
Okay, so the purple was the ones that
Here.
had, was
The
their
dark
preferred
purple.
plan. The dark purple was their preferred plan of who's getting the IA
Right.
systems.
Oh, let me slide it
I would be
over.
Yeah,
thinking
no,
you would
So
think
he's
it
calling-
differently from
Yeah,
those that
no,
are
I'll
colored
Nothing
in,
here,
Right.
yeah.
right? In terms of, obviously, you've already accounted for future flow. Or are you thinking, it doesn't matter, you're in the watershed, you're doing it, if you build a 25% floor area, if you use that, in an area where Amy's map showed you didn't need an IA, you're gonna have them put in an IA. I think that's a decision you
No,
have to
I
make.
mean-
It's just the purple, I guess, is what I'm
The
saying.
dark purple is in these
Yeah, you need to-
draft maps.
That's how I was thinking. That's what I'm just making
Because
sure.
I was actually surprised when she showed the eastern, the was it western side of
Davisville.
Acapesket, Davisville,
Davisville.
west Davisville, where they basically have just along the coast.
Yeah.
They don't have those dense developments inland requiring, and that's probably because the sewer is going to take out so much on the other side of the pond that they'll capture it and that they don't. And so, I mean, maybe we say, at least for the first pass, that it's, if you abut a nitrogen-sensitive water and are not the timing of the sewer. We'll have to we'll have to get some more detail on the phasing.
Well, we need to think about what our decision would be on that. If something's 15 years out, would you
Right.
require me to put an IA in? Would you require it at 10 years?
Yeah.
So,
Would you
mean, that's
require it at 7 years?
right, and I
see,
suggest we
that's-
come up with a quantitative answer to this,
Yes.
where there are a few parameters, and each one has a multiplier. How far you are, how long it's gonna be, how many people,
Yeah.
maybe how many bedrooms. I don't know, something. But those are, and I can't find it now, but I'd written
I mean,
some
that's
stuff down about this.
That's actually that's a
course
very
it's a
good,
good
that's a
idea.
very good idea. I think it's also importantly something that's because it's quantitative and very well based in rationality. It's something that's easy to defend.
And there was a regulation somewhere else that I'm trying to find, that I can't find it now, And I thought it was a completely different part of our regulations, not about, I'm saying this very poorly now because my brain is fried. It was if you were within 200 feet of a waterway, you had to do X.
Yeah.
And it was, when I ran into that, I thought, well, that would just be an easy,
Right. Any portion of the
straightforward
property is
thing.
within 100 feet of a
Yeah.
nitrogen-sensitive water body.
We already
yeah,
talked
whether
about
it's
that.
100 or,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, what's gonna happen is, well, we saw it with the one that we approved. I can't even believe that the sewer is, when the sewer is there, they anticipate that that same thing isn't gonna happen to a bunch of houses right on there. The redevelopment
Right.
stuff that is gonna happen is,
And also that ballot question is going to be on the ballot about subdividing to 5,000 square foot lots.
yeah.
And it's like 40B. The town doesn't have a choice. You've got public water and you've got sewer. You can divide your lot into 5,000 square foot
If you have sewer.
lots
If you have a sewer.
and public water.
Yeah, how are
But
they
just in
gonna
terms of
calculate
the rest of the town.
what can happen there? Because
Yeah,
that's scary.
yes, it is very scary. And even though it's a Massachusetts ballot question, the New York Times felt the need to chime in an editorial. Saying, hey, you purple states, you blue states, ante up.
Well, anyway.
Anyway, I
Okay.
digress.
So, does somebody, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think if I can take a run at this in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, what did we just adjust our meeting
We
schedule
just-
to?
Well, okay, so we haven't gotten to the meeting yet, timing yet, so, we'll talk about it in a second.
So we're talking about the criteria in which somebody needs to upgrade to
To an IA,
Right.
an IA system.
Yeah.
right.
And that should be maybe even a separate section so that it's really outlined, just go to here, and if you meet these criteria, and we just focus on creating that particular portion.
Well,
Well,
so,
it's
so here's the question.
1516.
Septic system location and construction, septic systems near surface waters and wetlands.
Yeah,
But wouldn't it go
Is
under
that-
15.16?
But it could,
That's
right.
where we already put this.
I
This is
think
where
that's
we
what
put
it
the
should
IA system.
Yeah,
The IA requirement, this should
Yeah.
go in with the
Yeah.
IA requirement in
Yeah.
16.
That's what I thought. Requirement to install alternative on-site septic systems in nitrogen-regulated areas.
yeah.
Yeah, you just update that section.
Just
So
update
We
that.
just have to put a new segment in there.
So, yeah, I mean, it would be, requirement for new construction, and it might be, that's 2, maybe 0.3, or, however we want to renumber that, in terms of, distance to, surface water in a nitrogen-sensitive area.
For any
Um,
portion of the property.
For any portion of the property, and what the increase in the, or what the changes would be to trigger that. And whether we want to try for George, how far away you are, for how long, and how many bedrooms as a trigger table, or whether we just want to say, nope, sorry. Anytime you're doing anything to your house and you need a variance.
well, variances, I think, are a whole new thing, as I said, to monotony in the last
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
Once somebody's asking for variance,
Well, I think,
then that
I
could
think
be the trigger.
I think what we should do is make it unambiguous.
Right, so it's not tied to variances, it's
So it's
just.
not tied to,
Right.
not tied to a variant, well, it can, if you need, you could say, if you need to require a variance, then it's in the IA.
Well, there is one thing that should be a trigger that is not tied to any variance.
Right.
And that is the increased size and
Yeah.
whatever it is, and
In location.
along
And
with
location, yeah.
the location.
Right, so whether it's a 20% increase and you're within 100
Right.
feet of
Okay,
nitrogen-sensitive water body.
okay.
But Scott, as you
Could
advise.
use habitable space.
Habitable space? Right,
Do you want to do this for a deck or a habitable space?
habitable space.
And Scott,
Yes.
just because this came up when we were struggling with this a few weeks ago, and you had mentioned like, oh, you're making my job so difficult because I've told people no increase in bedrooms equals, you don't trigger this. There is, in the standard conditions, this was pre-existing in our regulations. Section 3, item D, standard conditions. If somebody's looking for a variance, then you can require conditions that are listed here, one of which is that there shall be no increase in the number of bedrooms or rooms that could be adapted for use as an additional
Right.
bedroom.
That's always,
So,
That's
Right.
any
all.
room, any floor plan, whatever you label it, if it can be adapted for room as a bedroom, it's counted as a bedroom.
but I think
Well,
reminding,
we just add one then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Two
no,
extra rooms.
Okay, so what you're saying is every room should, well, okay, adapted's a big word. So you're saying,
those were very
Could be adapted.
obviously potential
Well, okay,
bedrooms.
okay, then maybe what you ought to do is define what you think a bedroom is.
Right. It's
You
the,
need to define it, because if they put a 4-foot or 5-foot cased opening, or one room flows through another room, I don't count them as both
Yeah.
rooms. So
Right.
if you need to say everything is a bedroom besides a deck, and then that would make my life a lot easier. If
Okay.
it's a hallway, it's a bedroom. If it's an alcove,
No.
no.
So no-
Because you should see, I look at floor plans, I spend half my day looking at floor plans, trying to decipher whether I think they're gonna be using that as a bedroom. So the word that could be adapted isn't a
Right.
good word for me.
yeah.
So we should
So is it
define what
the-
could be adapted for
Furnish the
use.
minimum isolation necessary is the phrase, and so that is very much that's either Scott or we make that judgment call, is that the minimum, and we've done, I've been on the board when we've looked at plans and gone,
A
you
cased opening.
it's gotta be a 4-foot cased opening, and then it's not a bedroom because
That's what we do.
there's not the expectation of privacy.
But you could put French doors.
Yeah,
Okay, so
but that's different.
That's an awesome thing. You tell me today, because what people are doing today is that they want the ADU, they're taking on a bedroom. So let's use your classic cape, 2 down, 2 up, okay? So they take one of the capes, and when they open it up between the 2 rooms, or they modify an opening that's 6 feet wide that has a door, and they push it back out 4, 5, 6 feet. If we're saying that's still a bedroom, you need to put that in here, because that'll just stop everything. Because that's what people do, is they make open floor plans that don't count as bedrooms.
Right.
But if you're saying, well, if it's kind of like this and kind of like this, you want me to count it for a bedroom, I think you need to put that in the reg. Because right now, the definition I tell everybody is bigger than 70 square feet, private or window and electrical service is a bedroom.
Right.
But the privacy thing is what they play with
Right.
to open it up to the rest of the house. If opening it up to the rest of the house is still not sufficient, because yes, if they label it a dining room and it's a 4-foot opening to the kitchen, you want me to count it as a bedroom, I'll count it as a bedroom.
Right.
Right,
So
you
it's
tell me what you want, if everything like that's a bedroom.
Right.
Because, there's a lot going on with the way things
we-
are framed.
So the challenge is that if somebody retrofits something back by putting in a door, we can't see, it is, I guess, I assume I don't know if it's legal or not, but everybody can come up with wording, so it's not all in one person.
Yeah.
Now we can see
See
how they match.
who wins the wording war.
Right. Okay. We're going to, so skip the guide for the moment again. I
Yeah.
do actually
You want
have
to continue it?
a graduate student who is Sea Grant funded, who will be working on this.
Okay.
So she was on vacation until something last week, so,
Keep it
a
on the agenda
well-earned,
for next time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely
Yep.
need to.
and then we have, the waiver form.
Yeah, and I would suggest two things. One, that we continue it, but two, that rather than thinking about how we want to modify the waiver form, what is it that we want to be able to decide? What information are we trying to get for whenever we're going to rethink how this regulation is working? And before we decide what the waiver form should look like.
Right,
Because right now, decide what the waiver form should look like.
right,
Because right now, they're largely handwritten, they're not machine readable. It's not even to know whether an establishment has made one out, you have to look in the appendix of their peopleized thing to see if there's something there.
right.
So I think worrying about the details of the form right now is far ahead of where we are.
Okay.
The thing I would ask to just do, because when I get back from my vacation, Scott, I'm going to ask you for a bunch of waiver forms so I can look at them, is that it say the name of the establishment on it, even if it has to be added manually in the permitized thing. Because when I look at permitized
Yeah,
as a non-town employee,
yeah.
I can't even see if there's an appendix, let alone what's in it.
Oh, the attachments.
The attachment, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna ask you to have Katie send me a bunch of them. Or somebody send me a bunch of them, and think about what are the establishments in town we think might be most interesting to look at. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's
the ones that
several
probably have a
hundred of
lot.
them, and
Yeah.
I suggest we ignore the grocery stores unless they do take out food. Even if they do.
I think you've seen some, Amy, been to stores and seen some improvement.
Sorry?
I have,
I have too.
yeah.
Yeah, and it may be. I'm told that everybody seems to think that's true, and I believe it. But it may be that we're not going to have any data by looking at these forms, because we don't know we don't know how accurate the forms are.
Right,
It's just what somebody wrote down.
right.
And we aren't going to have anything to compare it to, so we're for years and years and years to know if anything got better. Other than,
Other
I
than
think things got
colloquially.
better.
Right.
We need
you know,
quantitative data.
Yeah, we need to make it quantitative, and it needs to be machine readable, otherwise it's hopeless. But if the town doesn't, my personal opinion is, if at town meeting, they're gonna say, we wanna do this, town meeting also ought to say, oh, we're gonna have a database, or we're gonna pay somebody to enter the information into it. Otherwise, it's,
Right.
we're just kind of wasting our time.
Right. Okay, let's see if we can whip through some minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which one?
Let's do the oldest one, the 13th,
July 13th?
July 13th, yeah.
Those are the ones I went
I'll find it.
The only thing that I see is on page 5, I think it's Karsten, Doug, I can't,
K-A-R-S-O-N.
Karson.
Then on page 5.
It's on page 5, yes. It's, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
you would know that from the audio, so.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Are we at July 13th?
Yep.
July 13th.
On page 2, halfway down, this guy topless, for when records exist demonstrating historic number of bedrooms. It's right above Mr. McGann explained. Halfway down page 2.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Topolis asked a sidebar question about record keeping for when records exist demonstrating historical number of bedrooms. And then on page 4, this is what happens if you give me time to read these. The discussion of the watershed planning, responsible management energy. Consensus that some town department or official, such as a blah, blah, must own oversight of monitoring, and then at the end of that sentence, that is, monitoring of the reporting may be outsourced. Monitoring and reporting can be outsourced, but somebody in the town administration has to be responsible for looking at that stuff and making sure it gets done. That's what we were talking about. And that
Well,
got
yeah, I
said.
mean,
That's what was
yeah.
said, that's important, I think.
Well, it does, the way it's phrased doesn't, I think, doesn't foreclose that there is a subcontracting of the monitoring.
Right, no, I'm not saying, yeah, I'm just trying to make explicit what we were really getting at. What we were getting at is that in all likelihood it is gonna be subcontracted, but that's just to say that whether it's,
And somebody from the town
Town
has
has
to
to
have
be-
the oversight.
has to have oversight
Yes.
of the whole thing, as you were saying earlier
Actually,
tonight.
that's what I got from reading the original.
That's what I got from reading the original as well.
All right, then fine. Then I second George's motion.
Okay. Motion and a second to accept the minutes as amended.
Aye.
Aye.
I need a
Abstain.
motion in a second.
Oh, we did.
Right.
He
Okay.
made the
All
motion.
right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With
Abstain.
one abstention. Okay. August 3rd.
So,
I
on,
was not here, so.
yeah, the first item on this, the recreational camps for Woods Hole Daycare Cooperative, I feel like it's important to add a sentence, and it could be at the very bottom of page 1. That's probably where it's best, that the board explained that granting the variance requires a finding of manifest injustice. Because we talked about that repeatedly, so that they understood that they could come back, we could look at it, but that's a high bar.
Yes.
Okay, so it's just like the board explained that granting the variance required the finding of manifest injustice.
Yes, please. That was my only edit.
I thought the comment on page 3 was, by Mr. Topoulos, was extremely well reported there. On page 4, about 328 Elm Road, Mr. McGeehan did not find any septic systems within 18 feet of the well. Is that correct? Was that maybe 180?
100.
I mean, because the minimum setback is 25 feet, isn't it?
From
It's 100
here.
feet separate. I would have looked for 100.
And maybe you meant 18 feet of the property line and the well was a certain number of feet inside the property. I'm guessing that's what
Yeah,
it was, that there were no,
But I don't think
Off-site
that
wells.
was the, I doubt you said this.
I don't remember.
I'm guessing that's what it was though, 18 feet from the property line.
18 feet from the property line.
Yeah, any wells
Check.
on the abutting properties that were only 18
Well,
feet
I'd
away.
have to
'cause-
check.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
I
so-
did see Doug Carson's name needs a K again on page
Mhm.
5, very top of page 5.
Okay, do you want to approve these pending any check of the audio from Scott on that?
Motion to
So
approve. With,
Seconded.
Okay, motion and to approve the amended minutes for August 3rd, pending the health agent checking the item for 328 Elm Road. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Okay, that's our minutes. Our next meeting, so here is a bit of a challenge. We are scheduled for the September 14th. Dr.
I won't be here.
Topoulos will be enjoying Greece. I have international visitors and am not able to attend international
Okay, so we
scientific
don't
visits.
have a
So I've got
quorum.
work, so we don't have a quorum.
Okay.
So the next available date would be the 21st, I think. That's Yom Kippur.
Let's do.
And I won't be here then either.
Okay. Are you gone that whole week, or is that still
Yeah,
Greece?
no, I'm back Tuesday. I'll be jet lagged because it's 7 hours different.
So
Um,
could
do
consider
we want to do
another
the
night.
28th?
that week, or going
We
up?
are-
Well, during that week, you can't use this room. Downstairs, really, you have to go downstairs.
Oh.
During
Which
the week
week?
of
The
the
28th?
Well, assuming the beach committee will be out of that, well, they're out of that room now, so yeah, no, that's a normal week for us, a Monday's fine. If it's not a Monday, because planning meets here Tuesday, Concom's got it Wednesday, Thursday is ZBA.
Got it. I can do 28th.
I can as
So
well.
28th is what we were regularly scheduled for. We would just skip one. Does that work? Okay, so we'll just skip the 14th. Scott
So I'm
said
not
it.
getting out of any meetings?
Nope.
Sorry, nice try.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Jesus,
You
you're
were,
a tough
yes, you
crowd.
are getting out of a meeting. We're just all getting out
Yeah,
of a meeting.
Well, that doesn't count.
He's so selfish. All right, are we
Okay.
looking for a motion?
I wish to adjourn.
Oh, sticker.
Just one point, actually, before we adjourn. I know that the select board, and not just the chair, are interested in a joint meeting,
Yep.
which I mentioned with Amy, when Amy was here, that would involve water quality management, Board of Health, planning, us, I don't know
I
who
might add
else.
the fairness gang.
And the Fairness Gang.
And the fairness.
Absolutely, in the Fairness
I
Gang.
like the sound.
And it would be, and it is possible that it would certainly be a workshop, and it's possible that I don't know whether that would be, probably be a Saturday, and it would probably be all morning on a Saturday. So regretfully, but
Aren't
it
you
would not be,
retired? Every
but
day's
it
the
not be
same
until,
for
but it
you.
wouldn't be until later this, it would be after town meeting, so probably be possibly sometime in November-ish timeframe. In order to address the things that are arising for the different boards.
Okay.
So I just want to give everybody a heads up on that. I don't
Stay
know.
away from Thanksgiving week. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, oh, certainly, no. It would have to be, yeah, we're not going to get everybody. And if somebody just can't make it, they can't make it. It's just sort of what it is. So, all right, a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Second, aye.
I